hope everybody's doing well. Okay, inshallah, let's get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Thank you, sisters, for joining us. Alhamdulillah, we are now on I was trying to count the ninth session of ours. Okay. In fact, I thought I would start today with a kind of overview of Alhamdulillah, what we have done so far, what remains, and then if these classes continue in the future, inshallah, what we would be going through at that time, inshallah. As always, please feel free to comment and participate, and if you can turn your cameras on, that would be great. So Alhamdulillah, we have gone through 8 sessions so far, and most of what we want to cover in the course is now done. We did taqleed for about 2 sessions. We did wudu in a lot of detail with all the conditions and wudu jabira and what you need wudu for and all those things. I think over about 3 sessions. Ghusl and tayammum was quick. Some of the conditions that we discussed in wudu were just repeated there, so it was easier to explain, I think. And then the last 2 sessions, so I think we did ghusl and tayammum just in one session. Last 2 sessions, we've been talking about al-a'yanun najisa, the things that are essentially najis. And really, there's just one discussion left, maybe a couple of side things. Otherwise, most of what we want to talk about now till the end of the course will be about mutahhirat. The same way there's about 10, 11 things that are essentially najis, there are about 10 different ways that things become tahir. The main thing is water. Okay, a lot of the other things, as you'll see, they're not very common. They're not things we're gonna really come across much in our life. Main thing is water, which we will start talking about today. That water is what we make things tahir with. So mutahhir means something that makes a najis thing to be tahir. Okay, so that's what we have remaining, these mutahhirat. My estimate is that we will finish on November 21st. Okay, so we had in mind 12 sessions initially when we advertised the course and planned the course. Alhamdulillah, I think it's going to be altogether about 11 sessions. In fact, I am traveling on November 28th, so I won't be able to have a class with you sisters at that time. So inshallah, we'll wrap everything up by the 21st, and that will be the end of this course, inshallah. Just for those who are just joining, we're quickly going through the kind of overview of what we have done and what remains. Basically, the next 2 sessions, 3 sessions, including today, is going to be talking about mutahhirat. Okay. Also, inshallah, if the class does continue, if there is interest to keep the class going, probably what will happen is in after the Christmas holidays, we will start a second such course. So this first one was focusing on taharat. The next one would naturally, what would make sense is we would continue on to salat. Okay, I've given you kind of an overview of about most of the topics that are there in this book that I'm following and about how many lessons are there. Each lesson would approximately correspond to a session of ours, about how many lessons there are for each topic. Okay, so Taharat and Taqleed, which we were doing in this first course, was about 12 lessons. Salat is more than that. Salat is about 20 lessons. And then there's fasting and Hajj and Nikah, Talaq, under nikah, related to nikah, there's discussions about hijab and mahramiyah. There's discussions about death and inheritance at the very end of the book. Actually, it's less than 5 lessons. I was thinking that I could maybe open it up in a bit more detail and make it go into 5 lessons. Inheritance is dealt with very, very briefly in this book. It doesn't go into the details that are actually there in the Sharia. Food and drink, dhabiha, how an animal is slaughtered Islamically or hunted. There's lessons about government, which is, I think, quite interesting, but not at all relevant maybe for our life. About what are the punishments in the Sharia? What are the conditions of a judge witnessing in court? I don't know if it would make sense if we would want to do that, but it's something we could. Then there's long, long discussions about financial transactions, buying and selling and renting and other transactions that are there in the Sharia. There's stuff to do with like agriculture, stuff to do with business. A lot of these financial transactions are similar and they kind of build on discussions that initially, when you talk about buying and selling, you clarify a lot of the terminology and discussions, and then after that, it's kind of easier. So again, I think it's important. It's kind of necessary. So, if sisters are interested, if there are participants, we can keep going. It would take a long time, of course. Maybe this year we could just do salat like this academic year, I mean. Next year, by the way, my plan is personally, I am inshallah going to be in Toronto from the summertime. So, I'll be considering options of teaching classes in person. But if there is interest in continuing online classes, even the same book, inshallah, we can consider doing that as well. Okay, so inshallah on November 21st, which will be our last class, I will provide a survey to you sisters, and depending on the interest that's there, we can plan a subsequent class in the new calendar year, inshallah, after the Christmas holidays. Okay, if there's any questions or comments, again, feel free to jump in or ask even on the chat. Otherwise, I had in mind that before we start the new discussion on mutahirat, I had some questions, recap questions to just inshallah get you sisters thinking and engaged. So I have a bunch of questions here related to things that we have already discussed. Um, one second, allow me to just mute my WhatsApp so you don't hear the beeping. Oh, I'm on my browser that has, okay, one second. Just mute the site. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so some questions. Inshallah, I'll just pose these questions. Whoever wants to answer them, raise your hand, take up the mic. You can type the answer in the chat. The first one, does anybody remember when we talked about wudu, ghusl, and tayammum? There was a specific condition. It had an Arabic term that we explained, which we said it's there in wudu, it's there in tayammum, but it is not a condition in ghusl. MashaAllah, thank you for the sisters who are participating. Mualat or continuity. Okay, exactly. Second one, how to do tayammum. This would require the mic, I think. This is not something you can type. If anybody wants to quickly kind of summarize for us the steps of tayammum. How does one perform tayammum? Anybody brave enough? Yes. No, nobody. Sisters. Bismillah. Somebody. Thank you, Sister Mariam.
Explain it. So from what I remember, you
Yeah.
put your palms on the earth and
Mhm.
then you wipe your forehead and
Mhm.
then you take your right palm and you wipe it over your hand and then take the left palm and wipe it over the right hand.
No, vice versa.
Okay, opposite way.
Yeah. So just like wudu, in wudu we wash our right hand first, right? The one that is being wiped is the one that goes first, right first, basically. So just like you would wash your right hand first, you're gonna wipe the back of your right hand first. Okay, so this is my right hand right here with my ring on it. That's the one that I would first wipe with the palm of my left hand. Okay. Ahsanti. Thank you. Yeah, that's basically the gist of it. Of course, there's more details there, but that's the overall steps of how to do it. Okay, interesting question. We talked about najasat of kuffar last week. So let's say you go to, this is a relevant question. Like, let's say you have a Hindu friend, a Sikh friend, and you go to their house and they give you some homemade sweets, or they offer you food that's cooked by the mother by somebody at home. What do you sisters think? Is it going to be permissible? If it is, then based on what ruling are you saying it's permissible? Or based on what evidence are you saying it's permissible? Yes, Sister Hannah.
From what I remember, it's if like according to Ayatollah Sistani, ihtiyat wajib is that Hindus are not just so that way you wouldn't do it unless you do ruju of I think it's Ayatollah Maqam Shirazi if you believe in the ruju rules, and then I think it's okay.
Everybody should believe in the ruju rules. Like the ruju rules are fine, but the idea is, yeah, if you want to do ruju, I guess if you consider Ayatollah Makarim Shirazi as somebody that you can do ruju to. So yeah.
Sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Like if you consider
Yeah.
him, like if you
Yeah.
consider him, to
Yeah.
be at that level where you can do ritual of him. That's
Right.
worded it different. Sorry.
Okay. Sister Masuma and Fatima have asked a good question. Okay, I wanted us to think about this. That what if somebody were to say that, okay, even I'm following Ayatollah Sistani, Ayatollah Khamenei, the normal opinion where a Hindu is najis. But I don't know that they really touched it with their hands. I didn't see the mother in the kitchen touch the food with her own hands. What do you sisters think? Would that make it okay to eat it then? Let me explain something. This is actually really interesting. Um, if we ever study aqaid, we have another class that we just finished for the academy called a class on epistemology. Okay, that was the first of a series of Islamic beliefs classes, inshallah, we're teaching over there at another group of students. Although it's open, if anybody's interested, inshallah, we'll be continuing with that. Uh, Over there, we talked about where our knowledge comes from in epistemology. And one of the discussions we had was this idea of knowledge based on probability. Okay, this is totally relevant here. And we made this argument in that class that sometimes you can have knowledge even though it's not something you proved 100%, but it's so unlikely that it's not true that you basically have knowledge of it. We live our lives like this. For example, if I were to, okay, the extreme example, if I were to present a book to any of you and say that, okay, this book was written by a kid, there was a kid on Sister Mariam's lap a moment ago. Okay, that kid randomly typed letters and it produced this amazing book. All of you would reject that right away. You would say, no, that's totally impossible. The probability of a kid randomly just pressing buttons and the output being an entire organized, structured book is impossible. Okay, if I were to say, no, 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 there's a probability, okay, it's 0.0001%, but it's still a possibility. So therefore, you don't have knowledge about this matter. Then in return we could say that, look, I do have knowledge. Like my heart doesn't have the ability to even consider a probability of 0.0001%. For all practical purposes, I have knowledge that a kid did not randomly write this book. This is very important in other aspects of Islamic belief, like when we talk about proving the existence of God from design. Okay, atheists will come and say, okay, there's a possibility that, just the Big Bang, evolution, it all just randomly happened. And we could in turn say that no, when we see such a level of design in the world, it's such a tiny probability that you cannot give any importance to that. And you can very comfortably say that I have knowledge that there is a designer. Okay. Now, I know that's a bit of an extreme example compared to what we're talking about here, but perhaps we might come to the same thing where, if I'm at somebody's house and their mother has cooked the food, I have knowledge that it must have been touched. It's very, very unlikely that the mother was wearing gloves and not touching the food. And if there's no logical, reasonable chance that they wouldn't have touched it, then for all practical purposes, I have knowledge that it has become najis. Okay, so Sister Masuma, Sister Fatima, to respond to you, I don't think that that is an argument we can make. If we go to somebody's house, unless it's like, okay, you're at a restaurant and it's very normal for people to wear gloves in the restaurant, then okay, that's different. But if it's home cooked food, normally I think we would get certainty that it has been touched. So again, Sister Masuma Fatima, everything is tahir until you know it's najis. But what does it mean that you know it's najis? It's not this mathematical 100%. It's more this kind of urfi understanding of knowledge that you reach a level where it's so unlikely to be tahir that now you have to treat it like it's najis. Okay? So, Sister Masuma Fatima, I hope that answers your question. Basically, if you go to somebody's home, the way my question was, I think the only option is what Sister Hana said, where if you really want to eat that, you should be doing ruju to another marja that says that Hindus are not najis, and therefore you can eat their food. Okay, that was that. Baking with vanilla extract. Can somebody tell me not just the ruling, but why? Like based on what detail of the najasat of alcohol and things like that, we are gonna say that baking is okay with vanilla extract or not okay. Anybody remember? Let's start off with, okay, the asl. Is it okay to use vanilla extract even though it has alcohol in it? Yes, Sister Hannah?
Um, can I answer the original question?
Yes, 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 please. Yeah.
So I think from what you had mentioned last week was that I forget the Arabic term. I think istihala or something else.
Ihlak. Ihlak. Is
Okay,
different from istihala.
sorry, I mixed up the words. But
Okay.
you mentioned that if it is a very small amount compared to the bulk of what it's being mixed into, to the point where it's mixed in, and that it's so insignificant that you can't even tell almost, then it's permissible.
That was helping us fix one problem. What problem is that helping us with?
The alcohol in the vanilla?
Okay, let me just add something. If it was najis, could we say that istihlak? Would istihlak help us?
No.
No. Okay, so if you just put a drop of najasa in a big batter of, I don't know, cookies or whatever it is, the whole batter is going to become najis if it's liquid, right? So first of all, we have to solve the problem of potentially it being najis. Then we have another problem of it being alcohol, being intoxicating. Okay? That's where the istihlak can solve our problem. So what was the solution? Why is it not najis in the first place?
I think because Atila Sistani said that red wine is only the alcohol that's
Yeah,
najis.
yeah, exactly. For Ayatollah Sistani, only wine and ihtiyat wajib beer is najis. So other forms of alcohol, like whatever is in vanilla extract, is not going to be najis. Now that it's not najis, we have an issue that, okay, it's still alcohol. We can't have anything intoxicating. But there, because it's just a tiny thing that is dissolved in a larger kind of thing that you're baking, it should be okay. Okay, leather. Let's say you go to, I don't know, the store and you find leather, genuine leather, like this nice belt over here, right? But you're not sure what country it's from. Now, it could be from India, where a lot of the leather, a lot of the cows that are killed by Muslims. It could be from Turkey, which is a Muslim country, but it could also be from Europe or somewhere else. When it comes to najasat and tahara, how do we treat it? Yeah, Sister Masuma, here because we have here, okay, so as opposed to going to a Hindu's house and food that they've cooked at home, there, what I was trying to argue is there's no real chance it wouldn't have been touched. Okay, that's not a probability you would give attention to. But here, no, like maybe there's a large probability, 2%, 5%, 10%, that it's from a Muslim country or from a Muslim did zabiha of it, and therefore you can just treat it like it's tahir. That doesn't mean you can pray with it, by the way. We're not talking about ahkam of prayer and clothing of prayer, but it does mean you can treat it like it's tahir. Okay. Last thing, we said that there's a difference between tahara and being halal to eat. We said that there are many things that, okay, so on the one hand, anything that's najis is haram to eat. That's for sure. But there are many things that are tahir that are going to be haram to consume. Can anybody give examples? There's lots of examples. So something tahir but haram to eat. We just mentioned an example a few moments ago. Sister Hannah, what was the example we were talking about?
The vanilla.
Yeah, so like the vanilla extract we said is going to be tahir, but obviously normally alcohol, you can't consume alcohol. Here we made it okay by the whole idea of istihlak. Other than that, even so, Zahra Sab, your question, any animal you can do the biha if it's like if if you're able to, like if it has the neck, and I don't know if it's like a animal that it's not dangerous to try to slaughter it. You can make it face the qibla, say Bismillah, cut its neck with the ahkam of dhibh, and it would be a tahir body. Okay, so if you did that to a rabbit, the rabbit body would be tahir. The skin of it, the meat of it would be tahir, but it's still haram to eat rabbit. Okay, there's maybe a difference of opinion here, but I think most of our maraja say we cannot eat rabbit meat, and therefore it's going to be haram to eat. Even, for example, I told you, sisters, that if you boil grapes in water, as soon as you boil grapes in water, that mixture is haram to consume. It's not najis. Okay, this is not wine. Wine is made differently altogether. They put yeast and ferment grape juice. Here, if you just boil grape juice, it becomes haram to consume until 2/3 of it has boiled away. So that's another example of something tahir. Even anything, there are many things that are harmful that might be tahir, but it's going to be like, detrimental, really harmful to consume it. It's going to be haram to do that as well. Sister Hannah, what's the reason for it? There must be a reason. I'm not sure. Either it's a hadith, probably it's a hadith. Normally, a lot of these ahkam go back to a hadith that we have. Maybe it's something that sometimes it's just something that we don't have the hadith for, but all the Shia scholars have agreed upon it. And so we just say that, okay, these earlier maraja of ours had some evidence and it's become the common opinion. Probably not. Probably there's some hadith for it. Okay. Okay, with that, inshallah, we're going to start the discussion on water. If there's no questions or comments, I don't have slides for everything, so I'm just going to open a whiteboard soon and then we'll kind of walk through a lot of the ahkam of water. First of all, though, before we start, why water? Because, like I said, water is one of and in fact, the main one of the mutahhirat. There are going to be 10 mutahhirat that we go through. Water is the first one, the main one, which has a lot of details that we want to go into. Then very briefly, we'll talk about the sun, on the floor, on buildings. You can somehow, if it's wet and the sun dries it, it can become tahir. Earth for like the bottom of your feet. If you walk on the earth, certain conditions, your feet will become tahir. Istihala, if something goes through a chemical change such that the whole reality of what it is now different. It's like totally burnt, for example. The, I don't know, the carcass of a dog is burnt to ashes. Then those ashes would be tahir because it went through istihala. Intiqal, there are some specific examples of things that when it transfers, when blood is transferred into the body of a mosquito, okay, and it becomes part of the mosquito is tahir. a few examples like that. Islam for a kafir by accepting Islam, they become tahir. Taba'iyya, again, some very specific examples when you're washing a dead body, or I don't know, the child of a father who becomes Muslim, a mother who becomes Muslim, just by following, that child follows the father, or when you're doing ghusl, like the hand, I don't know, follows the taharat of the dead body that is now tahir. These are going to be very, very specific examples that are not too common. Absence of a Muslim had najasa on his shirt, on his skin, and then he went away, and then half an hour later you see him again, you can assume he's tahir. Removal of najasa, in some cases, like for example, I told you in your mouth, if you just remove the najasa, your mouth is tahir. Istibra of a jalal animal, that's nothing that's ever gonna happen in our life. Okay, it's like an animal that is so accustomed to eating najasa that their sweat then becomes najis. And then how do you make them tahir? You have to keep them away from the najis food. That's a quick kind of overview of the mutahirat. We'll go into the other ones that are not that common later on. For now, we want to delve into water and the different discussions about water. This is really important. This division over here that you can see is going to kind of be the um, table of contents with which we will now kind of proceed. First, we divide water into mudaf versus mutlaq. We did talk about this briefly at one point when we were doing wudu and ghusl. Does anybody remember what is mudaf water versus mutlaq water? We had said, I'll give you a hint if nobody remembers. We had said that all of the ahkam about water, like, doing ghusl with water, wudu with water, making things tahir with water, it all applies just to mutlaq water, not to mudaf water. Anybody remember then? What is mudaf water? What is mutlaq water? Yeah, Sister Hannah, water that's not mixed with anything else is with anything else that's not mixed is mudaf. No, the mixed one is mudaf. The one that's not mixed is mutlaq. Okay? But so that's why mutlaq is the main one that we're talking about. Mutlaq is the one that we need for all of our ahkam about water. Actually, to be honest, this is not even a discussion that English speaking people, I think, really need. This is more for Arabic, Farsi speaking people, where there are things that they call water, which are not really water. Okay, so in Arabic, rose water, also maybe actually in English we say rose water as well, right? But that would be something that's not really water. Or for example, juices. Okay, in Farsi you say like ab mive, ab anar, ab, I don't know, portugal. So the fact that the word water is being used might make somebody think that, oh, this is a type of water, we can use it for our ahkam, I can use juice to make my bloody finger tahir. No, you can't use juice to make that's not really water. Okay, if that's called water, that would fall under mudaf water. Normal water is what's called mutlaq water. Mujtahids give a nice explanation like this. They say anything that you can use, this is there in, for example, Ayatollah Sistani's Book of Laws, anything that you can use the word water to describe, and then you're correct in what you're saying. That's what's mutlaq water. Now, you can go on to say it is ocean water or sweet water or rainwater or whatever else, but even if you just called it water, that would be correct. Okay, so that's what we're talking about when we say mutlaq. That's what we need for wudu and ghusl and making something najis to be tahir. As opposed to that, the other type of water, mudaf water, it's not like you can't just call it water. If you were to just say this is water, somebody would be like, no, this is rose water. This is not water. This is juice. This is not water. So those are not relevant to us. Okay, the only thing we should know about those ab mudaf, ma al mudaf, is that as soon as a little bit of it becomes najis, the entire thing becomes najis. You could have like a 5 liters, 10 liters, 20 liters of juice. If one small drop of blood falls in there, the entire thing, even if it's like nobody's ever gonna have, but even if you have like an ocean of juice, the entire ocean is gonna become najis, like a swimming pool of juice. The entire swimming pool is gonna become najis with one drop of najasa. So that's something. This applies to all other liquids, in fact. When we say mudaf, we can somehow group with mudaf water all types of liquids, even if you're talking about, I don't know, gasoline or any other kind of liquid you can imagine. They all have the same ahkam. They don't help us for wudu or ghusl or making something tahir, and they all become right away. As soon as they contact a little bit of najasa, the entire thing becomes najis. Okay, that's basically all we need to know about mudaf water. Yeah. Okay, moving on. The next thing we want to now talk about is mutlaq water. Okay, like I said, mutlaq water is divided, or mutlaq water, first of all, it is normal water. It itself has different types that are important for us to differentiate. Ahkam are going to differ based on these different types. And so these different types that you can see in front of us right now are important, where although the main thing that's important is qalil water versus all the other types, as we're going to see. Okay, so the other types, but just to explain them, either that water has a natural source to it or not. Okay, if it doesn't have a natural source, it's called rakid water. And now that's just, stagnant water, water that's sitting in a vessel, water that's in a water tank. It doesn't have a natural source to it. Okay? Here we're gonna very, very important division is between a certain amount called kur water. So that's like 384 liters or more. Okay? That's going to be called kur. Less than that is qalil. That was all for rocket water. Other than rocket water, we have water that naturally occurs in nature that has a natural source to it. Could be a well. It could be water that is flowing like a spring or a canal of water. Could be rainwater coming from the sky. All of these are grouped with core water. The ahkam of these, even if there's just like a small well that doesn't have that much water in it, or a small river that's, not that much water, it has the same rulings. We will explain right now what those rulings are. It has the same ruling as core water. Okay, so it's really what was important for us to differentiate is qalil versus all other types of water. No, leaders, Sister Zahra Sab. I'll just double check for Ayatollah Khamenei. It is 384 leaders, 384. And even I have Ayatollah Sistani's right here. One second. I think it's the same. Yeah, 384 liters. Okay. So that's a lot. That's a lot. That's like a whole swimming pool or something, not maybe a whole swimming pool, but quite a bit of water would become kur. Water that comes out of the pipes in our house is core water. It's not a natural source, but it counts as core water. That's really important to know. As we're about to see, making things tahir with core water is going to be much easier. Everything, you just wash it once with core water and it is tahir. Or well water, or rainwater, or flowing water. Yeah, Sister Hannah, all the different types of غير راكد are the same as kur. There's this, Ayatollah Sistani has one special ruling, but it's ihtiyat wajib. So we don't need to go into it, and we can simply say that all غير راكد, so meaning anything that has a natural source, like a well or a river or rainwater, it acts the same as kur water. Okay? Let me now open up a whiteboard and just make some comments here for you sisters. Okay, so the first thing we want to, let me just see if I missed anything. Yeah, okay. So I think that should be good for the main discussion about like different types of water. Anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask. But now the first main important one. Oh yes, Sister Hannah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I have a quick question.
Mhm.
If rainwater is considered like same as rulings as core water, let's say if there's a small cut or something on my hand that is najis,
Mhm.
and it's raining, is there like a minimum amount that has to touch it, or how does it work? Because rain isn't, it normally is minimal. So
Yeah. Definitely this is there. If you give me a moment, I'll quickly see if I find it right now. Otherwise, I'll have to get back to you next week. 1 second. Um, But it's probably the idea of rain just falling on it successively and encompassing it. I'm surprised I don't see it right now. I'll get back to you. These ahkam are definitely clearly mentioned in the books. I just don't have right now it in my mind exactly. I'm guessing it's like what I just said, where you just put it under the rain, and if the rain falls on it completely, yeah, look, I think I found it. التطهير بماء المطر يحصل بمجرد استيلائه على المحل المتنجس. Yeah, so it's just like I said, okay, the rain has to fall on it and somehow encompass the whole area that was najis, and that would be fine.
thank you.
No problem. Okay. Okay. So one of the first important things to kind of recognize is this idea of how water other than qalil, so all the other types of water are mu'tasam. Mu'tasam, like the same idea, ismat, it doesn't become tainted. Okay, like ismat is like the idea that the ma'sum doesn't become tainted with sin. Okay, here it's the idea that like even if it gets mixed with najasa, even if it gets mixed with a little bit of najasa, it's still gonna be pure. It still has all the same ahkam. It is still tahir and mutahhir, and nothing changes unless it gets the color, the smell, or the taste of the najasa. Okay, so if you put so much blood in like a swimming pool, such that the whole water of the swimming pool is now like a little bit red, it's changed its color because of the najasa, then the water is now najis. Otherwise, if you just a small drop of blood falls in a swimming pool and then it dissolves and the water looks like normal water, then the whole swimming pool is still tahir. It's not just tahir, you can do wudu with it, you can make things tahir with that water. Okay, so all other than qalil, all other forms of water have this property where they are mu'tasam or ghayr munfa'il. These are like the Arabic terms that they don't they don't change just by a little bit of najasa falling in them. Okay? So qalil water is not like this. Qalil water is like mudaf water in this sense. So what I told you earlier about juice and anything mudaf water, you just drop a little bit of najasa in it, and the entire thing, no matter how much you have of it, would all become najas. Make sense? Okay. If there's no questions now, we are going to go into the discussions of making things tahir. Okay, inshallah, it won't take us that long. I think we'll finish it up today. We'll talk about making things tahir with qalil water and making things tahir with kathir water. And yeah, and also the difference between different things that we are making tahir. So dishes have a separate rule from other things. Okay, if something is made najis with urine, it has different rules. Inshallah, we'll slowly go through these. One important point though, before we start, is this idea of ghusala. let me just explain this concept of ghusala, and then we will start to talk about making things tahir and the number of times you have to wash. Will somebody ask some questions? Hmm. What about if the color of pipe water changes? When I was in Iran, there was an instance where I think the minerals in the water caused the water color to change. Would this be considered tainted? Good question. It would basically amount to whether it's still called water or not. Sometimes there might be something that, it's mixed with a little bit of dirt. Okay, but it's still abe mutlaq. It's still mutlaq water. You still call it water. Okay, there's lots of garbage in the oceans. There's lots of chemicals in a swimming pool, but that doesn't change the fact that it's called water. Okay, so just being a little bit tainted probably wouldn't change this. Okay, so the one idea of ghusala, and then I will mention something to do with the ahkam of the toilet as well. Okay, is water that you use. Okay, so there's two terms I want to kind of clarify here. One is called ghusala, and one is called istinja. Istinja is the water that is used to clean yourself in the toilet, basically. Okay, in the toilet. And ghusala is water that falls off after you make a najis thing tahir. Okay, so let's say my skin had blood on it and I pour some water on finger. My finger was bleeding. Okay, I pour some water on it. The water that trickles off after I'm making my finger tahir, that's called ghusala. Similarly, the water that might I know, splash after you're making yourself tahir in the washroom is called istinja water. Okay, so I just want to clarify the ahkam of this. Ghusala water, if qalil water was used to make something tahir, then this is always najis. Always najis. Okay, we're gonna see sometimes you have to wash something twice. Whether this was the first time you were washing it or the second time, it doesn't matter. The ghusala that spills off it is gonna be najis. Okay, so we have to be somehow careful. Like, um, if you're making something tahir with qalil water, that water that comes off is najis water. We don't want to fall into waswasa here and be extremely worried about it, but we do need to figure out some way to dispose or, get rid of that najis water. Just, between brackets, I think in Canada, life is much, much harder than in the Eastern world. Over here, I was just potty training my son. I have a 3-year-old son, like recently. We can just hose down everything over here. Like, the floors are all hard floors, and you can just take a pipe and put lots of water, and nothing is gonna leak. It's all made out of stone and brick. Whereas in Canada, sometimes, you're worried about, oh, if I put a lot of water, it's gonna leak through the floor. So we have to be worried about this. And if we are using qalil water, we'll come to it in detail, okay? But let's say I'm making the carpet tahir. If I'm putting a little bit of water, qalil water, then whatever is remaining is now najis water, is ghusala. I need to somehow mop it up, or somehow with a squeegee, right? Squeegee, like move it away into a drain or something so that that water doesn't remain. However, if it was core water that I was using, like I said, in the Eastern world, it's so much easier. You can just take a hose and hose everything down. Okay, because if it's core water, then the ghusala is tahir. Unless you see the smell or the color or the a piece of najasa or something in it, the whatever water remains on the floor is gonna be tahir if you were using core water. Okay, so this is a very important point that somehow is different between ghusala and the ghusala of qalil water and the ghusala of other types of water. Istinja has the ruling of uh, kathir, core water, basically. Okay, so somehow the ahkam are easier that when you go to the washroom, whatever is somehow comes off when you're cleaning yourself, with certain conditions. Okay, so I won't go into those conditions right now. I'm sure it'll be there in the notes. Inshallah, I will be providing you sisters with notes. Some simple conditions, but like unless there's a very obvious kind of najasa there, one or two other conditions as well. Generally, the water that we use to clean ourselves in the washroom is going to be tahir, okay? Unless it's like obviously najis. So it's somehow like, basically the conclusion, sisters, is that istinja water is like the ghusala when you are using kur water. Okay, so it's really ghusala of qalil water that we have to be careful of. If I'm, like I said, washing my finger that was bloody, or my kid urinates on the ground, and then I need to, like, if I'm using just a jug of water to make it tahir, I need to be careful here. The water that remains is itself going to be najis water. Okay. If there are questions, I'm guessing you sisters may have questions. It may become clear as we now go through the different types of things that we can wash and how many times we have to wash them. So unless somebody has a really urgent question, just bear with me. We'll try to clarify this. Okay. I think the book that we are following has a nice chart. So I just want to take a look at the chart, and then I'll try to draw that chart out for you. Yeah, right here. Okay. So basically, we'll do it like this, that mm, making something tahir. Okay. First of all, we say either we are talking about, we'll divide it first of all into dishes and not dishes. Okay, so dishes are basically things that you would eat out of, or drink out of, or cook from, something for food. I have a definition of it here. Okay, I thought I had a definition. Yeah, right here. It says what is intended by a dish, the Arabic or Farsi word is dharf, zarf. Okay, what is intended by actually maybe in Arabic they don't use this. This is the Farsi word, zarf. Okay, what is intended by a dish is something that is وسیله است که در آن چیزی میخورند. Yeah, something that is used to eat or cook. Yeah. Okay, so let's just, yeah, go on. I think that's clear. Yeah, something that's basically like a dish for food, like a bowl, a jug, a glass, a plate. Okay, so they have separate rules. And then other than dishes have separate rules. So the first thing within dishes, we say that are we making it tahir with core water, or we'll say qalil and not qalil. Okay, because we were grouping all the other types together. Okay, so if it's qalil water, we have to wash it 3 times. And so let's say my dish got najis, some blood fell into my glass, and now I'm making it tahir with qalil water, then I need to wash it 3 times. What does that mean? I can just put a little bit of water in it and kind of swirl it around and then throw it out. Put a little bit of water in it, swirl it around and throw it out. And do that the third time and it would become tahir. Sorry, it was qalil water, it was 3 times, not up here. Okay. Whereas if it's other than qalil water, it's going to be once. Like I said, other than qalil water, I think everything will always be just once. Wash it once. There are exceptions here for a dish that was licked by a dog or a pig, like a pig ate out of it, or alcohol that was used in it. Okay, so for example, the dog one, you have to put like earth. You have to put like sand, soil in it once, and then wash it 2 times. If a pig eats, you have to wash it 7 times. Alcohol has, I think, some people say 7 times as well. I was looking at it actually just before. Ayatollah Sistani doesn't have though. He says for alcohol, just 3 times is enough. So these are separate rules for these circumstances that won't normally apply to us. Normally, if a dish becomes najis, you wash it 3 times with qalil water and once with other types of water. Okay. The next thing is um, non-dishes. Here we want to add one more detail. Okay, you guys can see my whiteboard, right, sisters? The stuff that I'm typing. Okay. Um, we want to say either it was made najis with urine, Okay, so let's say it was like clothing or the floor or whatever, made najis with urine or not urine. Okay. If it's with najis with urine, then it has to be washed twice with qalil water. Twice, and other not qalil water once. Like I said, Ayatollah Sistani has some more details. He's more difficult here, but his opinions are ihtiyat wajib. So I'm just putting the other opinion. This is Ayatollah Khamenei's opinion, and people can do ruju to him. I think Ayatollah Sistani says basically natural running water, like a river or something, that's the only thing that you are allowed to wash once with. Otherwise, even core water, if it was made najis with urine, you should wash it twice. Okay, but it's a ihtiyat, and so we can follow Ayatollah Khamenei and we can just simply say qalil twice and non-qalil once. Okay. And if it's anything that was not made najis by urine, once, regardless of whether it's qalil or not qalil. So, for example, you get blood on the carpet, on your shirt, it just needs to be washed once. This is going to be important. We'll kind of go through some examples now in the rest of the session today, and just keep that in mind that generally it's gonna, as you can see here, we have a pretty easy situation. The only time we have a problem is if we're using qalil water and it was something made najis by urine. There we need to be careful that we wash it twice. Okay, so I'm gonna give examples now of what exactly we would do if, for example, a carpet became najis. Okay, and so we'll just kind of implement these things that we just said. Another point that I think I mentioned in the past, very, very necessary, important point, that these numbers that we're talking about, they apply after the najasa is itself removed. Okay, so there is this idea of somehow taking away the najasa. Let's say you got blood on the carpet. Okay, so first of all, using like a sponge or I don't know, however you want, you need to somehow remove. Again, we don't need to have crazy precision here. We don't want to be falling into waswas where we're doubting it too much. Just generally, there's the idea of taking away the najasa itself. So we use like a sponge to absorb the blood, take away the blood from the carpet. Now we have to wash it how many times? One time only. Okay, it's something, an example of something that's not a dish, the carpet. And I just said blood, not urine. So regardless of whether we are using qalil water or kathir or kur water, we just need to wash it one time. Okay. However, one important difference though was what I said initially about ghusala, that if you're using qalil water, then the water that remains on the carpet is najis. So you got to somehow mop it up. So what could you do? You could simply take like a jug of water, that area that blood spilt on the carpet, just kind of pour water on it, and with another towel, absorb that water. One time should be sufficient. If you want to do ihtiyat, you can do a second time as well. Bring a second kind of uh, towel and pour it a second time and absorb the ghusala. Now that towel is najis. Okay, so that towel you put it in the wash. We'll talk about the wash shortly, the laundry machine. But that you have to be careful that because you've somehow mopped up that ghusala, what is in your towel in your hand is najis. But generally, since you mopped up the ghusala, the carpet is now tahir. Everybody with me? Make sense? Yes, Sister Hannah.
Sorry, I'm just confused with the husala. Let's say it's on the floor or the carpet or anything. So you said once the najasat has been removed, you pour even qalil water just once, and then let's say you're absorbing the
Yeah, yeah.
because sometimes let's say if it's on floor, the water tends to spread a little, like
Right,
it's
right.
poured around. So you wipe that up with a towel, but you're like kind of wiping around the najasat. So is that whole area now najis? Like how does
Yeah, you don't need to worry so much about this. I know you're thinking that okay, like that was all najis and it's still wet over here, so then that wetness is from the najis. That's what I'm saying. We don't need to be too concerned about that. It's not this. Generally, this is okay. This is what we're supposed to do. And even though, yeah, like it's this idea that by pouring the water on it, you have washed it. Now you need to get rid of that water. Like, if it was okay, so you could do this differently, but like in Canada, you can't do it like that, right? You could, for example, pick up the carpet in Iran, the carpets, you just pick them up. You pick up the carpet and you take it to like the courtyard outside the house and wash it over there. And the ghusala falls off into the drain, for example, right? That would obviously be okay. But this is also fine as well, where you just pour the water on it and you just quickly kind of mop it up in a general sense. And you've done a wash. By doing that, you have done a wash. And what remains is now generally in the towel that you mopped it up with. Okay, so overall, even though if you're very, very precise and careful, you get worried, but you don't need to be that precise and careful. You say overall you've washed the carpet and it's done the job.
So if it's the same with like a countertop or something and you've wiped up the residue, so because you've already wiped it in the towel, do you have to wash it again, or like the area, or is that one time sufficient once you've wiped the ghusala?
Yeah, the one time should be sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
You just kind of, so first of all, let's say there's blood on the counter. Okay, so first of all, with a tissue or something, you take away the blood. Now you just need to wash it one time. How can you wash that? You can just pour qaleel water on it and mop it up. Or even like, if you have like what's the word? Squeegee, I think, right? Like you just with a squeegee, you move it aside to like the drain or something. And then you don't need to worry so much here that, oh, now I pushed that najis water along the floor to the drain. Whatever it touched also must have become najis. No, here it's like in a general urfi sense, it was part of the process of washing it once. And so, you've made it tahir now.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Okay, I don't know if we have time for more examples. Okay, there is something else here. Inshallah, we'll talk more next time about it, but um, you have to, so things that can, like carpets or clothing or these things, you have to squeeze out the water. Definitely, if it's qaleel water that you're using, you have to wring it. You have to squeeze it. If it's core water, I think the Maraja have a certain explanation where like as long as it somehow moves, like you put the core water on the carpet and you just kind of move it a bit with your hand and the whole carpet is tahir. Okay, but when it's qaleel water, because as we said, the ghusala is najis. So obviously if you're using qaleel water, you have to somehow wring the clothes or press the carpet so that that water that has been absorbed comes out of it. Again, you don't need to be too worried here. A little bit of dampness is obviously going to remain, but generally the idea is that you washed it and now you've squeezed that water out of it. Okay, for qalil water. For kur water, it's not that water is tahir, it's okay. It just needs to somehow kind of move through the carpet or the clothing and then that's fine. Okay. I know we've come to an end of our time. I'll just mention one last point about a washing machine and then we'll end with that. So, this is something that I don't want to say for sure. Like, it's something that you sisters or whoever, like, it's not the job of Marja to tell us. It's more the job of somebody who will look into how washing machines work. But from my understanding, it is core water. So you don't need to worry because that water is connected to the piping. And even if it's initially mixed with soap, it's gonna again rinse it a second time with core water connected to the pipe. That water comes into the washing machine and washes the item. So I don't think there's any concern. If you put something in the washing machine, even if it had urine in it, it's gonna be somehow tahir when it comes out. Okay, I'm open. I'm not saying that I'm an expert in how washing machines work, and if any of you has done research and you can tell me. I don't know if you want to tell other people, but I wouldn't mind being, I would be interested to know if anybody has done research, but I think just one like you throw it in the washing machine, it should be okay. It would make anything najis in terms of clothing to be tahir. Okay, I think we can leave it at that. There's maybe some more details that I'll prepare for next week, but generally this wraps up our discussion about making things tahir with water. Okay, sallallahu ala Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin. No problem.